They came with fire. They came with axes, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning. Or at the very least, that's a situation we could find ourselves in the very near future. I've seen some impressive examples of companies cutting off their nose to spite their face, but this one is certainly up there, and I don't know where this ends. If you haven't already heard, Games Workshop is in the midst of a major crackdown when it comes to IP protection, and the most important way this is manifested so far is in the 40k fan animation sphere on YouTube. Popular creators like Astartes, Brava Alpha, Sodaz, Absolutely Nothing, and others have been contacted by GW and essentially told them they can either join the company in an official capacity, or they will have to cease and desist making 40k cinematics for profit. In some cases, these community members have not only shut down their Patreons and advertising revenue on their channel, they've been put in a situation where they feel the need to take all their content off YouTube permanently. All of this comes in the run-up to Games Workshop's new Warhammer Plus streaming service release, and follows in the wake of former Hasbro and Turner Broadcasting executive Finn Arneson's hiring as their new lead of entertainment development. When this story was originally hitting the news, I had thought this would be relatively self-contained to just 40k fan animation that was clearly not in the realm of parody, but unfortunately this whole situation has the potential to get a lot bigger than that. A lot bigger. New intellectual property guidelines posted by Games Workshop on their website make it clear in unequivocal terms that they can go after you for using artwork, imagery, characters, or lore from 40k, Fantasy, and Age of Sigmar, even through the doctrine of fair use, which means lore videos, unit discussions, and even gameplay where excerpts are read from official army books or novels could potentially fall under that shadow. Now, if they actually tried to actively enforce that copyright law, attempting to strike YouTube content down or even get channels shut down permanently, there's no guarantee they would win on that front. I have been falsely claimed numerous times on YouTube in the past, and my appeals have always won, but those situations are incredibly scary as a content creator, and I've also never had to go up against a $100 million company before, and I'll be honest when I say I would not relish the opportunity to do so. A company attempting to enforce their IP protection doesn't necessarily have to be right. They just need to have more resources and power than you do, which is not hard for a $100 million company. And they can put a lot of legal pressure on a content creator like myself, even if it isn't a logical route to take. As many have already pointed out, this is essentially a sword hanging over the community's head, and at any point they could drop it on someone they don't like. Now, these reaffirmed IP guidelines, publicly posted on the tail end of their crackdown on 40k fan animation, is without question a tacit threat to discourage more creators taking up that same mantle, and it opens up a whole new can of worms when it comes to the Total War Warhammer series, to their relationship with Creative Assembly, and to other Warhammer games and mods as a whole. You might say, yeah, this is just standard corporate speak, this is just standard IP protection, they're not actually going to do anything, they're just covering their bases and limiting action to content they feel is a direct threat to their Warhammer Plus streaming service, and of course as owners of the IP, it is well within their rights to prevent cinematics being made that show their IP. But the question is, what do they consider a threat to their intellectual property? What will they selectively choose to enforce? And how far could they look to expand the definition of content that violates their guidelines? Right now, the only thing explicitly confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt is that they're going after Warhammer fan animation. But tomorrow, it could be the complete dismantling of the mod workshop for Warhammer 2 and the prevention of anything related to it in Warhammer 3. And that doesn't just extend to Total War games, it extends to all Games Workshop products and licenses. Games like Darktide, Vermintide, Space Marine, and Dawn of War. Day after that, it could be lore channels. Do you think Voldemort or Major Kill or Book of Choyer have the resources or ability to contest a massive company, strong-arming them with copyright claims and cease and desist letters? The answer is probably not. So where does this end? We already know that Games Workshop was originally somewhat reticent to allow modding in Total War in the first place, but the logical conclusion back then was that they just weren't okay with complete overhaul mods to transform Total War Warhammer into different IPs like Warcraft or Lord of the Rings. Games Workshop made it clear from the get-go that was not acceptable, and I don't think anyone can rightfully blame them for that. That's a clear-cut legal area no company wants to go down. But I am truly nervous about the potential for them to reframe their opinion on modding in Total War, because at its core, these are changes made to their IP without their explicit consent, And in a scenario where they're already cracking down on numerous other fan projects, they could absolutely go after modding, which would be devastating for the replayability of Warhammer 3. And they could go after lore channels, which of course would be devastating for YouTube content and one of the premier ways that people enter this hobby in the first place. Now, I think most of us can agree trying to dismantle modding would be utterly insane because it doesn't impact their bottom line or intellectual property in any tangible, meaningful way. It isn't competing with any of their products. It isn't siphoning any money away from the company. In fact, it does the opposite and encourages more people to buy, because if consumers don't like the vision Creative Assembly has for the game, they can make simple tweaks or overhauls to better suit their preference, and in that scenario, they're more likely to buy the product because they can make it how they want it to be, not how CA has made it themselves. Modding games does not impact GW's profits. It doesn't damage their IP, it doesn't damage their branding. But you know what will impact their bottom line? Pissing off every single fan of the goddamn setting. Going after the passion projects of some of the most beloved Warhammer content creators on the internet. Here's the thing, the part that makes this whole situation unbelievably short-sighted on their front. Games Workshop wants you to buy Warhammer Plus. They want you to invest in their streaming service for all that exclusive content. This is the trend businesses are taking right now, because having that guaranteed, recurring monthly income that rolls in like clockwork looks really good for your bottom line. Looks great for investors. This is about money. They don't want competition from the fan base. They don't want people to skip on the official products because Astartes is uploading cool fan animation for free, so they hire him or say, get lost, shut down your stuff if you're not going to enjoy it. So they think that by fiercely protecting their IP, like a dragon hoarding treasure, they will ultimately make more money in the long run. They think more people will buy Warhammer Plus because they don't have other alternatives to go to. They are wrong. Going after community content creators, especially ones that are at most only tangentially related to the IP in the first place, actively dissuades people from investing in Warhammer Plus. It's a new corporate soulless service backed by a shadowy conglomerate that is actively ruining people's livelihoods now. If people have to choose between that and a series like Text-to-Speech, which has been around for years and is beloved by millions, who do you think the community will want to back? Who do you think they will want to support? People have grown up watching these channels. They're invested in the homebrew aspect. They've played these mods for countless hours. They've been around for years. So instead of taking the free advertising and the free word of mouth that these mods and cinematics were generating, the tens of thousands of new converts from Astartes and all the new blood that's entered the hobby recently, and happily encouraging them to sign up for Warhammer Plus, they're taking a hardline, brutal, and divisive stance that's completely out of touch, buying a handful of people up, kicking the rest to the curb, and dismantling years of hard-won goodwill in an instant. This kind of corporate move will have the exact opposite effect of what they want it to achieve, which is to antagonize the community, split their community, divide their community, and make people who were perhaps on the fence about their streaming service, who were potential new converts, suddenly go, holy shit, they're shutting down all my favorite content creators. Why would I invest in this company now? Why would I pay for Warhammer Plus now? This content is free advertising. Many of their most diehard fans got into 40K in fantasy because of fan-made content, because of lore videos, because of those top-tier Warhammer mods, because of text-to-speech. Destroying the things that make your community the community will never be the correct approach, not just from a moral perspective, but also from a business perspective as well. Things have the potential to snowball completely out of control from here. There's no guarantee that they will, but the posts they've made and the actions they've undertaken so far are at the very least a tacit threat to all content creators that they can go after you, if they so choose. So, if the stance they're taking on this issue bothers you, if you're scared to see more of your favorite content creators go belly up because they can't take on a gigantic corporation in the court of law and don't want to live with that shadow over their heads, if you're afraid that Games Workshop might try and dismantle the modding scene for Warhammer 3, which is becoming increasingly likely given the current situation, then this is what you can do. Consider whether or not Games Workshop products are really worth purchasing at the moment. Do you really need that flashy new $150 model? Do you need a gallon more of Citadel paint? Do you really want to buy army books, codexes, war scrolls, and novels to support these kind of divisive practices? Is Warhammer Plus really worth your investment if the trade-off for it is the potential disillusion of the Warhammer scene on YouTube? My point here is, I think you should maybe consider not buying their shit until they get their heads out of their collective asses and stop this insane, inane, and ridiculous crackdown on people that were contributing to their bottom line. And I get it. Games Workshop don't think these people were contributing financially, and that's why they're doing this. Because we can rest assured, if the number crunchers at Games Workshop had come to the conclusion that all these fan-made cinematics were earning them more money, generating more customers for them than they would have otherwise, none of this would be happening. If there was a tangible way for them to measure the impact that someone like Alpha or Astartes or Total War modders had on their IP, they would have data that supports the conclusion that these kind of hobbyists and creators directly benefit the company, that they don't detract from it. The point is, Games Workshop don't think that because they don't have a tangible way to measure it, and so in this situation, it's clear they can't see the forest for the trees. Games Workshop is wrong, and this situation needs to stop before it gains any more momentum. They don't make money without the fans. They don't earn a living without the fans. Without the fans and the consumers and the hobbyists, they disappear into nothing. So, if you're going after fans that are actively promoting your hobby, your product, your business, you have lost the plot. The other thing you can do is contact Games Workshop. Not to rage, not to scream, not to harass employees who have nothing to do with these decisions whatsoever, but to calmly, reasonably, and intelligently explain why what they are doing is wrong and why you will not be supporting their business until this stance changes. I'll have a link in a pinned comment in the description below to the Games Workshop complaint website, as well as a chain letter that you can amend to your heart's content to include the now very much under threat Total War Warhammer modding scene and lore video content on YouTube as well. And I do recommend that you edit it to personally reflect your values, your wording, your beliefs, and that you put your heart and soul into it so that it doesn't look like chain spam. Big shout out to KLC81 for putting the framework together, but let Games Workshop hear your voice. And more than that, let them feel the financial ramifications that are a direct result of their actions. If you feel strongly about this, don't buy their products until they stop this campaign, until they change their perspective on what they're doing. The bottom line is this: Games Workshop isn't going to change their perspective on this because of a few videos like mine. They don't care about fan furor in a vacuum. They don't care about forum rage or cheap talk on Discord. They care about their bottom line. They care about their profits. Because I guarantee you, the average Games Workshop employee is not a fan of this move. I guarantee most of them are right there with us. They don't want to see text-to-speech die. They don't want to see these awesome fan works get deleted from YouTube forever. It's the out-of-touch executives and legal teams up top driving this hardline stance. And the only way it's going to change is action. Peaceful action, calm action, rational action, but action nonetheless. If we don't speak up now, if we don't draw a line in the sand, if gamers don't rise up, then they could very well look to expand this even further than they already have, which could lead to some very unpleasant outcomes. I don't want this to get any uglier than it already is, but I have a bad feeling this might not just stop at 40k animation. It is a dark, dangerous road to go down that has massive ramifications, not just for fan-made cinematics, not just for the modding scene for Total War, which has given millions of people untold hours of joy, but for the hobby as a whole, for YouTube content creation as a whole. People's livelihoods are at stake here, and the saddest thing about everything going on right now is that none of it was necessary or well thought out on their front. It's a bad business decision, and more importantly, it will have the exact opposite intended effect. Games Workshop is on the wrong side right now, and it needs to stop. Only way it will is if we speak up and do something about it.